check, mic check. All right. Looks like just like that, we are back. We are live. Thank you so much for joining me. We're so back. Had a great day. It's probably because I started the day by drinking some Saratoga water, obviously rubbed the banana peel on my face, and then dunked my face in the bucket of ice water. So obviously, we're having a great day, right? I mean, these trends are so funny. Oh my gosh, it's so good to be back. Hope everyone's doing well out there. Where are the bananas at? You hiding them? See, Joe gets it. Joe gets it. Oh my gosh, you have to laugh at this stuff going on. And I actually, to start off, I'll say I watched Penguin Z Zero's video on it, and he was saying how the guy basically makes videos like that all the time just to draw engagement, so people actually maybe check him out and then buy his thing or something like that. So low key, he's winning out of this whole thing, but it's absolutely hilarious to me the way it's blown up. You gotta love the internet, right? The internet is truly undefeated. I think there's no doubt about that. I don't remember a time where the internet's ever taken an L. So, anyways, here we are. We're back. As you can see from the chart here, it's been a wild year for GameStop. It's been a wild ride in general since January 2021, but what a journey this has been. I feel like right now, more than ever, the company's really at a turning point. I guess you could argue that over this whole time period, the company's been evolving and changing. But I think, really right in here in this era, since kind of Roaring Kitty came back, now it's kind of okay, we've raised a bunch of capital. What are we going to do to move forwards? And obviously, there's a lot of different speculation out there. Those of you that know me know, by the way, follow me on X if you don't already. But those of you that know me know I try not to over speculate or overhype, just because I feel like there's so much hype out there, and I've been around long enough now where I've seen so many hype dates come and go, and I'm just honestly completely numb to any kind of hype. So there's nothing wrong with getting excited or speculating, but for me, I just sit and wait until I hear something from GameStop. If I don't hear something from GameStop, I'm good. I'm just going to stay on the sidelines, right? But obviously, the big thing everyone's talking about right now, I mean, it's a bunch of big things. The new investor relations page kind of looks just like Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway investor relation page. Is that intentional? Probably. Does it mean something particular? Not necessarily. Obviously, that's to speculate on. Maybe we'll get some more information tomorrow. But yeah, it's just great to be back, and I will be streaming tomorrow as well, covering the earnings live upon release. Going to start around 3 Eastern time, so about an hour before the earnings. Just kind of ease into it, and then we'll cover it live, and then I'll go as long as I can until I'm exhausted. So here we are. Hey, Tetron, KCR, thanks for being here. Michael, thanks for being here. Namac, Dopecho, hope you're doing well. JPP. Wendy, what's up? It's a nice GameStop chart you have there. Yes, sir. Yo, dancing is forbidden. Thanks for being here. GameStop changing their investor relations page is very strange. It is. It really is. And obviously, there's a lot of speculation as to what this means, right? It's crazy. I use this app called Obsidian. It's so cool for taking notes. And it's just crazy the way I just keep adding to it over time. And all of a sudden, I was just looking as I'm starting. I'm like, holy cow! This thing has gotten insane, right? But back here, right? The conversation was, okay. Oh, he took a picture with Michael Saylor. Then before that, I'm not sure if I have it on here. I don't think I do, actually. That picture of that guy, Sultan, which I'll get to that in a little bit here. Let's kind of ease into things. I have a lot of different thoughts on that as well. But it takes a picture of Michael Saylor. So I did a poll. Do you think GameStop already bought Bitcoin? Because, they do have the investment policy in place where they can basically make investments of their choosing. And the investment policy was approved in March 2024. We haven't seen anything done yet with it. So actually just about a year ago. And then it was slightly amended on December 5th. I'm sorry, December 5th is when it came out, and it was slightly amended a little bit about a year ago. So about a year and 3 months, but we really haven't seen anything out of it yet. But the question was okay, did Ryan Cohen buy Bitcoin? I'm pretty sure at this point we could check right now. He's still following at Bitcoin. I think that's one of the only ones he's following. Yeah, so this is something people talk about. He's following Bitcoin Magazine for a very long time. He just followed GameStop, so this was obviously an interesting development, especially after seeing it with Michael Saylor. And then, the other side of the coin was well, Ryan Cohen's taking a picture with a bunch of people. Carl Icahn was kind of the first one. And then we've seen a bunch of them here and there, even people like Trump. And we have this picture over here, which again, this is Sultan I was referring to. This is that other guy that's been tweeting a lot, I'm pretty sure, unless it's a different individual. But again, we'll circle back to that. So Michael Saylor and Ryan Cohen, did he buy Bitcoin? I have so many mixed ideas, and especially with all this new information coming out, it's like no one knows for sure, right? And we'll know for sure whether or not it happened tomorrow. However, I just feel like either he bought Bitcoin for GameStop in a small percentage. I don't think it would be an overwhelming amount of the cash reserves, or he's buying Bitcoin personally and outside of GameStop completely. Which, as time goes on, and seeing the new investor relations page and just as you know, you kind of digest it more. It seems like that's more likely the case. And those of you that know me know I'm long on Bitcoin, so I already have plenty of Bitcoin. So I'm totally content with GameStop not doing anything with Bitcoin, but also I'm not against it either because I do like Bitcoin, if that makes sense. But I really do want to see them ultimately grow the business and take it to that next level. You know, PSA is a great start. We're going to get into that a little bit later as well. But I want to see them really, drive into another segment or two of business or make an acquisition of some kind. And what that acquisition could be is purely up to speculation at this point. But it started, with Bitcoin. And then we see over the past several months, right? I tracked down, I used Grok to help me get the official job listings that GameStop had posted, or the ones that Ryan Cohen tweeted about, rather. So we talked about the retail and supply chain about a year ago. Head of omnichannel engineering, that was in September, and then December motion designer, and then December again software engineers. So these two really seem like part of the core business and just trying to make it stronger and just really executing at the highest level possible. But in terms of these two, could this have something to do with what they're looking to do next? Potentially. I can't quite put together what that might be, but maybe if you guys have any ideas, feel free to throw it in the chat. So those are, some small developments that have taken place. And then they announced they're going to pursue a sale of French and Canadian operations. So continuing to downsize. Evidently, they really just want to focus on profitability. But of course, revenue can't go down forever. I'm not going to be in denial about that. But for the time being, if revenue is going down but net income continues to go up, I think so be it. Not everyone's necessarily agreeing with that, but it's one of those, like, it is what it is. Like, they've made it clear that that's a process that they're willing to go through. Whether, it takes closing stores for another year or so, I'm not sure, but obviously we'll just have to kind of see what it plays out. And then obviously this is a new investor relations page. And then we got PSA. They're nearing 1 million submissions already. So, and I wrote over here just as a note to myself, can be patient, but they can't wait for a market crash forever. They have to do something at some point. And this was before the investor page was updated. And I think I might even put that before the Bitcoin speculation started. But for a long time, I thought, okay, they've been stacking cash. They're waiting to use it for a market crash scenario, which I totally get and respect. However, it's like you can't wait around forever. But at the same time, what I think is kind of commonly forgotten is that GameStop really only had $1 billion in cash. When I say only $1 billion, $1 billion is still a pretty significant amount. However, they raised $3.4 billion in mid 2024, right? So they raised 933 million in May 2024, then in June a little bit over 2 billion, and then in September they raised another 400 million. So at this they raised 3.4 billion, and at this point they have about 4.4 billion. We'll get an exact number tomorrow, and it's likely going to be a little bit higher because I'm estimating net income will be about 100 million. That might be a bit of an aggressive investment, but aggressive estimate, but I don't really think it's completely out of the ballpark, completely not possible at all. Obviously, that's why it's my estimate, not investment. But we'll have to see, right? Like, it's all really just speculation and estimating until we actually get the concrete numbers. But that's what we're here to do tonight, so that's all right. But let's hit the chat real quick. Where the bananas at? Yo, Ice Cream Taco, thank you for being here. Ice Cream Taco, that sounds pretty tasty. GameShire Stopaway, Michael Tucker, that's what they're saying, man, that's what they're saying. Tomorrow we will see. The whole GameStop thing has been a crazy ride so far. Willing to hold a lot longer, though. Me too, KCR. At this point, I've held for quite a while. It's been quite a journey, but where am I going to go at this point, right? And I just love this story, and I think it's so unique, and I just laughed at people like, what are you doing with GameStop? Like, you follow investments, you're like following the markets, but GameStop is like your biggest position? That's so bizarre. And I'm like, I know, but don't believe, just watch. That's what I say to people too. I'm like, listen, this isn't for everyone, and that's totally okay, but, if you want to do your due diligence and research and see where this thing could go, that's up to you, right? And of course, it is all just could go, right? Could this, could that, until we actually see something concrete. And you can't trust anything until you hear from GameStop, because the newest thing now that I literally just saw today, Okay, so yes, there's a hidden mergers and acquisitions tab on the GameStop investor relations page. I had a friend check it for me because I was at work at the time, and he said it's there. However, friendly reminder: this means nothing until GameStop themselves come out with an announcement. Because we've seen this so many times. There's been a hype date, a hype thing, and it works out to be nothing, right? Or just something that was completely overblown. Although this is really encouraging, my friend suggested, shout out to you, Zach, if you're here, that it could be a situation where if they copied some kind of code, maybe that automatically came in, right? Or just, I forgot exactly the way he explained it, but essentially that it might be just kind of like a defaulted thing, not that general, but point being, it could just be a page and then maybe no merger acquisition has taken place, right? And also, it's kind of funny to me to keep hearing like merger and acquisitions. I would only want an acquisition scenario. I don't really want GameStop to merge with someone unless it's still GameStop. I wouldn't want a situation where they've kind of become part of another company and then I get shares in another stock. I guess if it was something wonderful, then maybe, but you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's really about acquisitions. But I get it though that mergers and acquisitions, are generally referenced together. So all I'm really hoping for is no ATM offering right now. Anything else is just gravy. WM, I definitely see what you're coming from. But one thing I will point out is it's remarkable how fast they've been able to complete their offerings. So 6 trading days, 3 trading days, and 9 trading days. Although, to be fair, this one you could say, wow, 75 million shares in 3 days. But at that time, it was having crazy volume because obviously Roy and Kitty was back. And there was just a lot of different stuff going on there. But you could see how fast they sold shares and at which price, which I have over here. Right, so they sold shares at an average price of $20.74, and then $28.49 was the average price of the next one, and that was the 75 million shares. And then the last set of shares were raised at an average price of 20. But I definitely see where you're coming from in terms of them not wanting to offer an ATM. But it's like if they're going to do another ATM, like I feel like we've got to at least have a little bit something, right? And also, speaking of things coming and going, remember this stuff? This supposed leaked post, right? And it was from 4chan, and then early 2024 tinfoil, aka nonsense. Excuse me, Wu-Tang, right? That there was this secret thing with the Wu-Tang NFT type of thing. That Ryan Cohen was the guy facing backwards in the hoodie, right? Because he wore the same hoodie. Don't forget about all the forget GameStop articles, right? For the longest time. And what was the latest one? It was like even a cat can't save GameStop or something so bizarre. But point being, it's all speculation until it's not. But don't get me wrong, like I really want to see them do something. And that's where I guess to get to the next point here, this whole thing with this dude Sultan Alamadid, apologies to him for butchering his name. It's just weird that he keeps posting about Ryan Cohen. And also if you look at the pictures, right? Shout out to whoever said this on Twitter. I'm sure it was more than one person, but someone pointed out the fact that they're wearing the same clothes in each photo of them. There's been a few of them posted, so it was all from the same day. He's posting it over different periods of time. And I saw someone saying "Oh well, it's not Sultan who's running that Twitter account. It could literally be anyone." Yes, but I think it is Sultan, right? But I think he's okay, there are tons of people who follow Ryan Cohen. Now that I've associated with him, or that keep up with GameStop and Ryan Cohen, now that I've associated with him, maybe I can bring some attention to me, right? And it felt like for a moment we were going to get a scam coin that was going to be pumped or something of that nature. But, that didn't happen. But at the same time, it's just why, right? I have very little faith that it'll be a situation where that Ryan Cohen comes out with something tomorrow that is in relation to this guy, right? So let's see some of the stuff. He's just posting kind of random stuff now. But let's see GME versus Nvidia, what is the point of this post? You know what I mean? Which there's nothing wrong with it, right? I'm not saying there's a problem, but it's just kind of why, if you know what I mean. It just doesn't quite make sense. How many VCs have achieved a similar better return? How many VCs outperforms SPY, QQQ, GME? Okay. We have a new investor relations page. Retweets it. Your fave AI chatbot. Okay. Then this guy. Yeah, let's get to him next because he's been posting a lot of stuff about it too. And then this. What is this? Apollo? Interesting, huh? I mean, Apollo's a whole conversation in itself, right? So we won't touch on that today, but it's kind of only do giga deals? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Time for the next gen Berkshire Hathaway BRK $1 trillion company. It's like I just have a hard time believing he doesn't know what he's doing and like posting about this stuff, right? He's talking about tokenized GME stocks and make it accessible to global investors. It just kind of seems like he's like just using these like buzzwords, right? Like anyone could pretty much invest in GameStop worldwide. I know the whole tokenization of stocks things is very debatable, but I think unless there's like clear regulatory framework for it, I just don't see that as something that's beneficial. And look at the last time we had tokenization of stocks. Look at FTX. They didn't actually have any shares at all. They had nothing on their balance sheet that they were talking about apparently having underlying, right? So I guess at this point too, maybe people see me as like a naysayer, but I'm just so numb to all the hype and like over speculation, right? And then looking forward to host Ryan Cohen in Qatar. Okay, but what does that have to do with GameStop necessarily, right? So, and then posting this, like Avery and dress look interesting, just to like kind of get everyone's attention. And then see, this is the original picture. And yeah, and then before that, see, he was just posting like random stuff that was getting like not a whole lot of likes, right? It's just kind of odd. And he's just posting a picture of someone else. That's fine. Posting about AI. Not sure who this is. Exploring. Okay, so he did post about GameStop here. So I will say that is interesting. I actually didn't see this one. Some old cards, but anyone could be a collector. Good to meet you. Rare cards is an asset class. Okay. Oh, speaking of cards, I did do my first cards graded at GameStop. This one's my absolute favorite, Jesper Bratt. Probably my favorite player on the Devils right now. Obviously, I love Jack Hughes, for those who don't know hockey. But this one's signed. I can't believe it got a PSA 10. I actually bought it off someone on eBay a long time ago, ungraded. I figured, I'll send it into GameStop to get graded. But, I'm seeing the Venusaur that's reminding me of my Ivysaur I have. The same set, right? The 1999. And then I got this Steelix. Too bad it's in such crappy condition. But I was literally just trading for cards as a kid. That's how I have these. So otherwise I wouldn't have had these particular cards. So it was a smooth process for me. I got the cards back in under 2 months. And, we'll get into that a little bit later. I really love what they're doing with PSA. But PSA alone is not, like the grading process is not just going to be okay, wow, the company is, growing revenue again, net income is booming, and oh, wow, everything's all fine and dandy, right? Like, they're still going to have to do more, and I like the private label brands, such as CandyCon, Mod Retro, that they're creating in-house. These are all things moving in the right direction, but I still feel like we're missing that big thing, right? And let's go through Omar's real quick, because now all of a sudden he's, see, I will admit, this is pretty funny. But see, posting the cat. Okay, this he stole from someone else. This whole trend is just cracking me up. I absolutely love it. Posting one about Elon. I don't even know this guy is talking about his coin as a president. What a crazy timeline we're living in, right? No matter what you think about all this stuff, you have to laugh at this timeline we're living in. It's truly bizarre. Sultan AI for predicting camel races. Try to do a podcast without me. Like, it just kind of seems like Sultan of Squeeze, right? That's funny. He posted Fitzy. I didn't even see that. At this rate, we will get Sultan and Omar this weekend. That's what I was talking about with this. Like, we were going to get like a crypto coin scam type of thing. It seemed like it was going that way because they just started posting all this stuff about GameStop like out of nowhere. That's the whole thing. It's just like, why? And I personally think it's just to kind of like draw engagement. You don't think these guys gain tons of followers and interaction on their X pages? And for what reason that exactly is, I don't know, but I can't help but think, it's people trying to grift. We've seen people do that in the past. I won't name names, but, we've seen it happen, right? So the game sign, like, what is this? Like, just having fun with AI, I guess, GME, which, it's fine. You could have fun, but it's just like, you can't tell me like this guy isn't trying to like draw people in to follow him. Like, sorry, that's just what it seems like to me. So, but let me see. Let's go, Jimmy. Help a dude out like the Vin. The Sultan of Mergers. It's 10 for sure until it's real. Exactly, Ben. Exactly. Good to see you, man. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for being here. And yes, if you guys drop a like, that would be greatly appreciated. Guy in the middle of that picture is Talal Ahmed Gondal, founder of Tag, which is the first digital bank of Pakistan. Okay, Bad Robot Ventures, thank you. I appreciate it. See, that's good info. I think someone might have commented that. The dinner pick, yes. Hello, Tetra. Not negative banana. Definitely not the negative banana, but what's up? What's up? Thanks for being here. So let me write that down so I could follow up on that. But even if it's that, right, it's like I do wonder if it's something, but is it necessarily something with GameStop? Maybe. But again, I'm just so immune to hype at this point, right? Because I just feel like I've seen so much come and go. But to be fair, a lot of it I think was when I was more naive, and it's just some of it in the past was like complete garbage, right? But we'll see, right? It's all hype and tinfoil till it's not, as Ben said. So we'll definitely have to see how this all plays out. It's such a wild, wild story. And if you guys aren't already, toss me a follow on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it these days, where I'll post updates and a couple things we're going to go through here in terms of the preview. But yeah, so we got this new investor relation page. We got Ryan Cohen appearing in pictures with various people. GameStop planning to pursue a sale of French and Canadian operations. Expanding PSA. You know, Nat Turner was added to the board not too long ago. We'll get down to that here. So it was added to the board in November. So keep in mind, you know, Q4 is November, December, January. So they had started their partnership with PSA shortly before that. And, you know, I've seen some speculation that, oh, well, maybe GameStop will buy out collectors. And by the way, guys, check out this interview if you haven't already, if you really want to learn a lot about PSA. Shout out to Neo Cards and Comics, just casual collector dude on YouTube that I found. I thought he did a great job in this interview with Nat Turner. I learned a lot about just PSA in general, and it just kind of got me more into it. So shout out to him for that. Definitely watch this if you haven't already. And you get to see some perspective from a GameStop board member. But in terms of like GameStop acquiring collectors, which is the parent company of PSA, and also, you know, they have this thing called WADA Games, which is basically like certifying games just the same way like you would certify a card, and like some things like Queen, right, greatest hits, which I think is cool. But and I like the idea of GameStop maybe, you know, branching into that in some form. However, you have to look at the fact that the most recent valuation I could find, if anyone has anything up to date, feel free to throw it in the chat, let me know. But the most recent valuation for collectors I found was a $4.3 billion valuation. And this was from March 2022. So at this point, literally 3 years ago. And at that time, they raised $100 million at a $4.3 billion valuation. So if GameStop has roughly $4.6 billion in cash right now, say $4.7 if they just got a lot of net income from this quarter, it's still a situation where like this is definitely going to be worth a lot more. I feel like PSA has definitely grown. At what rate and how much so over the past several years, I'm not sure. But for them to acquire it, like it, I'd have to think it costs at least 6 or 7 billion. And when you're talking about an acquisition, it's usually like you're paying for multiple years ahead's growth trajectory within the valuation you're paying to make the acquisition. So with that being the case, like you look at maybe 7, 8 billion. What's GameStop going to do? Issue a ton of shares? Wouldn't they already have had to do that if they were going to announce the acquisition tomorrow? Or are they going to issue debt? Which does that really seem characteristic of GameStop in terms of, you know, just how they're going about things? I just don't see them issuing debt, to be clear. So, and then, you know, this was Nat Turner at the time. Vision's always been to reinvest via technology and capacity, expansion of our brands to simplify the collecting experience through innovation. As a long-time collector, I'm personally passionate about the industry and have been thrilled to be part of its overall growth for the last several years. We're continuing to focusing on improving the customer experience and providing trusted tools that every collector needs. And again, this was 3 years ago, but from what I understand, PSA and just researching on it, although I've gotten really more involved since GameStop has, to be fair, but from reading about it, it seems like they've done a lot over the past few years to just kind of streamline things and improve it. Because apparently when he took over, there was just like a huge backlog. The process was not smooth, so it took a lot of work to ultimately turn things around. Having said all that, I think it's about time we get into numbers. I'll hit the chat one more time, and then we're going to get into my personal estimates. But I want to be clear. Those of you that know me know, I'm not in the business of giving financial advice. I'm just here to give thoughts and opinions. Please don't ever make a decision off of anything I say. I'm just learning as I go, just like the rest of you out there, and just doing my best to estimate the numbers because I look at these analyst estimates. I think they're silly. There's only 2 analysts covering the stock. So why won't I estimate myself when I'm trying to follow it closely, right? And I'm sure there's a bunch of people out there estimating as well. And that's fine, right? I think that's totally okay. And I actually encourage you to make your own earnings estimates with any company you follow, right? I think it's a great thing. Michael Saylor pick, just follow the money. Good point, Joe. Great point. Assuming a 9-11% CAGR from that valuation, yeah, it would be pretty significant in terms of what they would have to pay to buy it out. But let's get into it here. So here's how I got my estimates. I tried to really break it down step by step. So first, I looked at the prior 3 quarters of 2024, and I did the rate of revenue decrease. You got about almost 29%, 31%, 20.22%. That's an average rate of decrease of about 26.81%. So then we looked at Q4 last year, 1.794 billion. Now, assuming the average rate of decrease, that would be 1.31 billion. However, I'm going to bump it up a little bit considering PSA card sales, grading, and just shifting towards trading card as a whole. And also with the grading, I feel like that's bringing more people in the store. And I found myself when I went to GameStop to pick up this awesome card, Jesper Bratt, my boy, I wound up buying a bunch of hockey cards, right? Or I'll show you the best ones, I guess, right? So I see I got like a whole bunch here. This one's pretty neat. Oh, yeah, here, I got you guys. I'll make it nice and clear. Voila. Oh yeah, and those who've been following me on Twitter, see, I've been growing some plants. We got basil, carrots, peppers, just trying new things because why not? I thought it'd be cool to grow some stuff. So just got a bunch of different players here, right? But I'll show you the best cards I got, which I went ahead and put in some sleeves here, or forget the exact term, card savers. Or so we got this guy, Matt Rempe. He's the guy that's like known for elbowing everyone in the head right now. Connor Bedard, absolute stud. He's going to be in this league. He's a beast. So this is pretty cool. City Satellites. This is like a throwback Young Guns. So it's like a throwback card of this really good player, Drew Doughty, for those of you who aren't aware. And then this one was pretty cool. Matt Duchene, who just hit like 1,000 games fairly recently in the NHL, which is incredible to go 1,000 games. Like it's such a grueling season, and they play 82 games a season. So he's been around a while. But point being, I wasn't going into GameStop to buy those cards. I was picking up my cards and I saw it. I go, well, my $5 coupon's going to expire. Might as well just pick up a box, right? And I love hockey, so why not collect some cards? And then I was getting nostalgic semi-recently when I was going through a bunch of my old cards that I have. So I figured, let me just pick up a box. Maybe I'll pull something decent. If not, it's cool to kind of hang on to some cards as time goes on, just as a fan of hockey and just, I would say, a relatively newer collector. But all of a sudden, I'm looking at my desk here and seeing like how quickly it's just filling up with cards. But that's just a small example of increased foot traffic in the store. I wouldn't necessarily have gone to GameStop if it were not a time where I was going to be picking up a card. Not to say everyone's doing that or people are going in there and buying every single plush toy, right? I'm not trying to be, over hype about it, but I think it is enough that's boosting things a little bit. So for that reason, I added 25 million and I made my overall estimate 1.338 billion. And you also kind of see it going down the bottom of the screen here. And then from there, I wanted to look at the interest income. So they had about roughly 4.6 billion at the start of Q4. So I used the lower end of the federal funds rate, 4.25%, although they did cut rates about mid-quarter, about December 18th, if I remember correctly, from 4.5 to the 4.5 to 4.75 range to 4.25 to 4.5, but I still use the lower end because, usually money market accounts, bonds trade just slightly below that current federal funds rate, right? So I just figured I'd use a pretty conservative estimate. So if you do 4.25% on 4.6 billion, that would equate to 195.5 million. Although there's some speculation of rate cuts later this year, so I wouldn't just use that number for the next full year ahead. But for Q4, so you divide it by 4, you're looking at them earning just about $49 million of interest income, which is pretty remarkable and I think is great. However, we do have to be realistic in that cash can't be held forever, right? Purchasing power continues to decline. You just look at money supply of the US dollar over time, and this is why I hold Bitcoin. The US dollar money supply will always increase. It doesn't matter who the president is, who's in Congress, who's in what position, right? The United States of America will always print money. So if they're always printing money, you're losing purchasing power over time. So yeah, it's great to be earning this interest for the time being, but they can't just hold cash forever. But again, to be fair, when you look over here and you see the summary, which actually I have it here too, 3.4 billion in cash was raised on the share sales throughout 2024, and these are not even a year old at this point. So I'm gonna give them a little more time, right? Or I'm gonna wait as long as it takes in terms of holding the stock, and that's just the journey I'm on. Of course, make your own decisions. But what I'm trying to say here is, even if they don't make an acquisition or the acquisition story or news doesn't come out tomorrow, I don't think it's a reason to completely freak out and go, oh my gosh, they're never going to use this cash. Like, I think if by year end we don't really see them use the cash or anything, then it's kind of like, all right, like, what are we waiting for? Give us something, right? So that's where I'm kind of at with that. And then when you look at full year 2023, interest was 49.5 million. So in this one quarter, they're basically going to earn as much as they did in all of 2023. So obviously the increased cash pile was the difference, and you could see interest income for the same quarter last year was only 15.3 million, so there'll be an increase there. And obviously Q4 has always been GameStop's best quarter because of the holiday season. Nothing changing with that, right? So year-to-date net profit through 3 quarters is zero. I was about to say 0 million, $0, right? Because if you add up their net income through the first 3 quarters, it essentially equates to zero. It might have been like 0.1 million or negative 0.1 million, which if that's the case, that basically means that whatever they come out with in terms of net income for Q4, that's actually going to be full year 2024's net income. So that makes this report, in my opinion, like that much more significant. I think this is a big one, guys, because it's a situation where, they have more capital than they've had before. There's all this speculation. You see Ryan Cohen is clearly networking with a lot of people. They're getting more involved in PSA. They're doing investor relations. And one other thing about PSA that I forgot to mention thus far is that they're also selling the cards online, right? Like they're buying cards off people and then selling them. And someone commented, shout out to you if you're here, on my post analyzing the PSA sales. When you look at their inventory right now, their inventory is going to hold its value much better. Cards, generally speaking, are going to hold their value much better than games, right? Because as games age, they typically go down in price. Obviously not vintage games, that would be a different case. But if you're just looking at, like, for example, right, if you buy NHL 25, or they're selling it, they have a bunch of copies selling NHL 25, but then NHL 26 comes out. What happens to NHL 25? It goes down in price by like $20. So now their inventory is more of a liability than an asset. And shout out to whoever mentioned that, because that was an excellent point and additional context on my thread I wrote, which we'll get to a little bit after, on PSA grading partnership. So looking at that, right? Now we want to look at operating income, which is, how much they're making, not considering the interest income. So we have 46.2 million for Q4 2023, and then we had 55.2 million last year, the same quarter. So assuming another roughly 20% increase, that'd be about 65.95 million. That's a hard number to estimate, right? Same with the revenue. It's really not concrete. I want to be perfectly clear on that, but I just want to use rough estimations. And just with their overall push towards more profitability, I don't think a 20% increase of operating income is really that bizarre. So altogether, then I got the margins here. I'll also be updating these charts I have, posting them after earnings tomorrow. So the net income estimate would be 65.95 million operating income, 48.875 million interest income, and then minus about 10 million in income tax, right? When you look at what their income tax was, I think we have it right here. Over the past couple quarters, where are we? So income tax, well, that's the full year, but income tax, okay. So it went from 4.2 million to 7.9 million. And you could ask, well, where do you got that income tax number? Honestly, it was just a pure guess. At this point, I was writing this morning. I was running out of time. I was like, I got to get to work. I cannot be late. So I was like, let's just use a flat 10 million. Seems like a fairly reasonable estimate, right? And overall, that would bring us to net income of about 104.825 million. And if you map that out relative to the 437.9 million shares outstanding, assuming that's roughly the same, maybe it's going to go up just a tad bit, right? Just for share compensation for Nat Turner or other board members potentially. And that would be about 24 cents EPS. So all two analysts predict 1.48 billion in revenue and 8 cents of EPS. And that 8 cents of EPS is about 35 million net income. So in my opinion, I think analysts are overestimating revenue. Although I hope in terms of the revenue, I hope I'm wrong and the analysts are right, because I would love to see revenue, hold up a little bit better than I expected to. But also, I'm just trying to keep it real. But again, none of this matters, right? Until GameStop reports earnings. That's really the numbers you want to go based on. This is just speculation and preparation. So I think the revenue is overestimated by analysts, but I think the net income is wildly underestimated. I have a really hard time believing that GameStop will report 8 cents of EPS. Is it impossible? No. But I just don't think that's the case. I just don't really see it playing out that way. I would honestly be shocked. But also, just kind of given the nature of the stock and the fact there's only two analysts covering it, I almost feel like, right, and this is just purely like me guessing, right? And I don't have any evidence of this, but just it almost feels like they purposely overestimate on the revenue and then underestimate on the net income because they want to be able to say, "Oh, look, they keep missing on revenue. Revenue keeps going down, and they just keep missing." Just to kind of like move the narrative away from the fact that the net income continues to improve and the bottom line continues to improve, right? Which we can see back here. So look at the dramatic change from 2022 to 2023. And even just looking at this year versus last year so far, net income was improved in Q1, even though it was still negative. I'm also hopeful for the next Q1 that we see a positive number because I think if we see that from there, undoubtedly, if they can pull off Q1 2025 a net profit, I feel like they can really maintain net profitability on a consistent basis quarter after quarter going forward, and I think that would be excellent. But either way, if you look at it, net income is improving year over year and obviously improved a lot from 2022. And, I'm not saying revenue going down is ideal, but for the time being, if that's what has to happen for net income to rise, so be it. So, the official Tetron estimate, right, would be about 1.339 if you want to round billion of revenue, just under 66 million of operating income, and just over 104 million of net income, which is about 24 cents of EPS. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with the estimates right now. Again, it all comes down to what they report tomorrow, right? And then you could also look at what they did last year for reference. So if you go to the investor relations page, go to news releases, you go to, full newsroom, and then you could sort by year, right? And then you could go to last year's. You can go to 2024 and then look at last year's, right? Which I already have pulled up here. But then also what I'm going to analyze more tomorrow when the actual numbers come out is like the numbers relative as a percentage, like what's their gross profit margin, what's the operating margin, and what's the net margin. So I really also want to see operating margin get positive because, it's been slightly negative, which we also have visible in my chart over here. So yeah, operating margin, which previously I just said gross and net margin, but I realized we got to add operating margin here because it's definitely a significant factor. So I think they'll obviously turn operating profit in this quarter as they have, the past couple of Q4s. But then it's really about 2025 and beyond, the operating profit being on the positive side. And then obviously whatever cash they have, earning interest would boost the net income as well. So, maybe we could look at like a 4% number, right? 4.1%. That would be pretty solid, like a full basis point forwards. Then maybe net income, we look more like 5%, right? That would be pretty encouraging. Some rough numbers. And also I want to see gross margins stay above 30%. I think that'd be really nice. I'll be honest, seeing this go down a little bit here versus here was a little bit discouraging, but not the end of the world. And again, just throwing a bunch of thoughts I've kind of been having in looking at all this as of late out there. So we'll see what it comes out to be, though, right? Because it all comes down to what does the company actually report, and that we will just have to stick around and find out to see. But let's get caught up here. Have a quick sip of water. It's important to stay hydrated. Could potentially be a cash-free plus debt-free merger of equals. Also, who knows? 3-1 or 2-1 ratio outside of grading sales, and that's in terms of the collectors. Yeah, not impossible. I'm not. There's probably other ways they could go about it besides just issuing additional shares or debt in order to complete the acquisition. But it would have to obviously have some terms. So outside of grading sales revenues, there's sales of sealed packs, sales of graded slabs, auxiliary sales, like you're describing. But yeah, agreed. The biggest thing about the partnership is the incentive to go in the stores that was partially lost from the move to digital. Absolutely bad robot. Couldn't agree more. That's why I don't want another ATM right now. We have enough on the balance sheet to be profitable overall. Just raise another raise just to raise. No thanks. If I wanted more of that, I would buy bonds myself. Great point, WM. Sub Tetron EPS estimate. Just got there, Scott. Thanks for being here. Hope you're doing well. Accretive ATMs are good though. If there's insane volatility, it moves the net asset value up significantly when executed right and brings major long-term shareholder value. Yeah, that's definitely fair, and I definitely see why, they raised capital when they did. Obviously, it was during a very volatile period back here because this is And originally they raised shares back here as well, way back when. But then for this whole period they didn't really. And then things started going off. They're like, all right, time to issue some shares and let's raise some capital. And in doing that, they've kind of raised the floor, in my opinion, because as of last quarter, they had a little bit over $10 per share in cash. So, right now, even after this little rally we've had here, it's still trading at about 2.5 times the underlying value in cash. So, not even like price to book, just like price to cash ratio. Although most of their book, you could argue, is pretty much the cash right now, but it's still like if GameStop ever went to $10 a share, theoretically, I assume they would just buy back some shares, because then it's like, okay, we can basically buy back our shares 1-to-1. But obviously that gets complex if you're trying to raise capital and use your capital. Like, can you really go back and forth between issuing shares, buying back shares, right? Then that could create all kinds of regulatory issues. So I don't really see them buying back shares, but I also don't really see the stock going down to this low price here. People say back here, oh, Ryan Cohen killed the squeeze and doing this, but like, he's not focused on a squeeze, in my opinion. He's focused on the company, driving forwards. And if you told anyone back here, right, in April of 2024, hey, over the next several months, GameStop is going to issue over 100 million shares. But guess what? The price is going to be floating in the 20s for the most of the rest of the year. You would have said you're crazy. You would say, what do you mean? How are they going to issue shares and raise all this cash, 3.4 billion, but the share price is going to be higher? That just doesn't make sense. But sure enough, that is what happened, right? Like, they raised capital here, they raised capital here, and then they raised capital once more over here. So in doing that, they basically raised the floor, generally speaking, or however you want to look at it, because, they have all that cash now. But again, it does have to be used at some point, right? Like, so they can't just sit on it forever. But, for the time being, like, I think they can take their time. And it almost seems like changing the investor relations page is a nod to people like, hey, we're ready to start acquiring things, right? But it's like, what are they going to acquire? Is it going to be Bitcoin? Is it going to be publicly traded companies? Is it going to be private companies? Is it going to be nothing yet? And we're going to say, hey, we plan to use our investment policy throughout the next year ahead in fiscal 2025, right? I don't know. These are all kind of things being thrown around out there, but sooner than later, it's like we gotta get something, right? And again, I like what they're doing with PSA, and I really feel like they're moving in the right direction with all these things, but they just don't have that big thing yet, right? That's really like gonna push them forwards and get revenue back on track, or raise the underlying value even more so, right? If they go the acquisition route. Let's see. I guess I think 5-6 weeks away from that. Reporting for duty. Leapfroggles. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for popping in. Welcome back. Because I can. That's right. Because I can, I'm back. But yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. What's up, Jesus? Thanks for being here. What is your favorite color and animal? Oof. Animal. I guess right now, like, I have these like African dwarf frogs. They're freshwater like frogs that can coexist with my fish. So I guess I'm gonna say frog right now, just because I've really been loving taking care of them and having them as part of my tank. And I really just didn't like aquatics, so I guess I'll say that. And favorite color, honestly, like a forest green. I don't really know why. You could say, "Oh, this guy is saying green because money," but just from a young age, like, I always just like the color, like the darkish green kind of color. But black and tiger, I'm gonna say it's green and a lion. See, Joe knows me pretty well. He got the green right, but yeah, lion's a pretty solid one too. Nah, it's purple squid. Absurd Whirlpool, thanks for being here. It's definitely a rainbow sloth, actually. Touch on the last post on my X page is some thoughts on this use of the investment policy if you're interested in reading. Yeah, Robot. Send me a DM with that. I'll definitely check it out after the stream. Because I do have a couple other things I want to get to. And then maybe I'll touch on it tomorrow, a little bit later, or send me a DM, because I just want to make sure I keep going through my flow here. But I'm always interested to hear what you guys have to say. Like, you guys could always feel free to DM me. I'm not always the best with communicating, and I'm trying to get better at that in terms of like connecting with people and just being more active on X. But honestly, guys, for me, I don't want to say it's hard, right? Let me be careful how I word this. Like, I'm, besides like doing Tetron, this brand I'm trying to build, or whatever you want to call it, like, I don't post on social media. Like, X and YouTube are the only place I post, and it's for my like quote unquote brand. I don't post like on my own. I'm not like phone eats first, or like, hey, out with the boys, hey, drink. Like, I really just post for Tetron. So like, if it weren't for doing what I'm doing, I honestly wouldn't really post online at all. I'm kind of just like a live in the moment type of person. I'm not saying I'm on the internet, but I'm more of like a lurker, and like even like I have Instagram or whatever, but like, I don't go on it. Like that's from like years ago, from when I was like younger and stuff like that, or Snapchat. I even only have Snapchat downloaded still, just because I have like a few group chats in with like old friends that it's like nice to stay in touch with. But I'm not out here putting stuff on my story. You know what I mean? So what I'm trying to say is like I like to just disconnect sometimes. Like it really helps me just reset. So, but at the same time, it's like if I'm trying to do what I'm trying to do and create content and like cover things going on, you have to be on top of everything, right? So I always try and like balance. And it's like they always say like touch grass, right? I really try and touch grass a lot and just balance and just put my phone down sometimes and just relax, right? And even like, I feel like we could find ourselves in these habits where, not to get too much in like a preacher mode, where like even when you're watching like I like watching football and hockey. When I'm watching, I'm like on my phone, and I all of a sudden I'm watching like a game. Like, why am I even scrolling? And like when the TV's already on, you know what I mean? It's just like weird how our brains are just becoming wired to just like constantly like be stimulated by some kind of like scroll, and it's just endless, right? The scrolling's just endless. But I'm not gonna go on too much of a tangent here because I do want to get into my PSA thread. And thank you guys so much for the love on this. This was probably the biggest thing I've ever written. So I'm incredibly thankful. Thank you to everyone that engaged, liked, reposted. Very, very thankful. 43 bookmarks, warms my heart. And yeah, if you want to follow me on X, I'm really trying to start writing more, about GameStop, Bitcoin, some other individual stocks, and just interesting stories because I've read some really cool stories that people took the time to write and put together. And yeah, I think and I've always kind of enjoyed writing. But it's funny though, like I didn't really enjoy writing until like I got out of school. Like I always hated doing it in school, but like once I could write about things I wanted to write about, like I've started to find some enjoyment in it, right? And like making this like whole big like web file here, like of all kinds of different stuff. Like I've started to have a lot of fun in doing this, right? And like creating these charts and like putting information together and just kind of doing things in my own way, right? But having said all that, I do want to get into my thread here. So the goal of this thread was to estimate like what PSA could be doing going forwards. Because a couple people did point out that the estimates I'm doing are based on the new numbers because they recently raised prices, as you can see here, from $15.99 to $18.99 for TCG, and then other cards $19.99 to $20.99, and that's pretty much because PSA announced price raises, so GameStop did as well. But then some people said, "Oh, they don't have a discount," but I don't. I find that very hard to believe, considering that GameStop sent 1 million cards over only like an approximate 5 month span. And think about it, people are still figuring out that GameStop grades cards, so I think there's some growth there. At what rate it could grow, I'm not sure, but let's get into it. So I assumed a 90 to 10 split. Again, this is the interview I referenced, Neo Cards and Collectors. He had Nat Turner on not too long ago, and they were talking about GameStop at this point. If you listen to the interview, it's around the 41-minute mark, and he's like, Neo says something along the lines of like, "Oh, I bet it's majority TCG," and Nat's like, "Yep, about 90%." So that's where I got this 90-10 split, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Most of what I've seen online seems to be Pokemon cards and things of that nature, right? Like trading card games. I knew I was such a newbie in the beginning. I saw TCG and I'm like, what does that stand for? Then I looked it up, trading card game, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But, I was a part of the 10% in getting this Jesper Bratt card, so I keep showing it off to you guys. I love it. But then I also got this Russell Wilson card, just because he was on the Steelers last year and I'm a Steelers fan. I had it. It's a rookie card. I'm like, you know what? Why not? But I should have known. This one only got a 5 because, again, I didn't take care of things when I was younger. This one I got on eBay, and shout out to whoever sold it to me because they took excellent care of it, and it has a signature on it, which is super dope. And then also, like, I've been buying these other cards from GameStop, right? Just as I see like a card I like, I'm like, I'm gonna add it. And then I just bought a Macklin Celebrini card. He was the #1 overall pick in the NHL draft this past year. Card was going for a relatively low price, and honestly, I think he's gonna be an absolute stud. So I just figured I'd pick one up. So using these estimates, right, and then looking over the 5 months. So over 5 months, right, that'd be about 19.19 million. So again, that's not accounting for the past 5 months because these are. I was thinking about it as I was writing it, right? I'm like, do I want to reference the old numbers, the new numbers, both? I was trying to do both originally, but it just kind of made things confusing. So I just wanted to kind of walk down the line of like looking forwards. So, this isn't exactly what they earned over the past 5 months. Let's be perfect, just to be perfectly clear here. But then when you estimate, right, like you take that number, divide it by 5, you're looking at estimated revenue of 3.8 million per month going forwards, and that's just assuming the numbers are the same. And then on a yearly basis, that'd be about 46 million. So that's 11.5 million per quarter of top line revenue, because you just get that by dividing by 4 if they maintain this pace, or multiplying this number by 3, for the 3 months in a quarter. And then doing a little bit of research, I thought this 40 to 45% number was not that absurd, right? And I'm not saying that GameStop gets a 45% discount, right? Because there's a 10% difference in terms of what GameStop charges versus what PSA charges, right? 10 to 15%. But then, there's that 10 to 15%, but then maybe there's another like 15, 20% that is a bulk discount because GameStop's sending so many in. Like, yes, a couple people pointing out also that GameStop is not the only company that's facilitating grading, by taking it in. But I don't know of anyone else who's facilitating PSA grading in terms of like taking the cards in, sending them PSA, getting them back, and then giving it back to the person that's doing it at the scale GameStop is. I think GameStop is by far the largest. If there's someone else, please let me know, but I haven't found them yet. So I don't think it's that unreasonable to assume they get one of the largest discounts, especially when Nat Turner, the guy who's pretty much at the top of collectors, parent company of PSA, is on the board of directors with GameStop and working very closely with them. So I don't think it's that absurd, but in doing that, that would assume they're getting about 7 to 9 million on the bottom line. So I wanted to be transparent. I used Grok for that estimate, and then I was just reading a couple just miscellaneous things on what that could be like, right? But again, that's just an estimate. We don't know for sure, and we probably never will, to be honest with you. But using these estimates, rough yearly income of 46 million. About 18 to 20 million, right? So this is forward looking for the year ahead, just assuming the same rate, not even assuming any growth. It's quarterly average about 11.5 million, quarterly income of about 4.6 to 5.1, and that's on the bottom line, right? But again, we don't know for sure, and these are just my opinions. And then if you wanted to do a 10% growth trajectory, this is what it would look like, and that's also assuming they don't charge more in any way, that they're only growing 10%, right? Who's to say it's not a lot more? Because again, it's like relatively new, and I feel like people are just learning that GameStop facilitates card grading. And also something, to go back here one more time, that Neo pointed out in this interview at some point. He's like, yeah, honestly, he said something along the lines of, yeah, honestly, like I don't think GameStop grading cards is really the most in the ballpark for most of my subscribers and followers, because he's heavy duty collector. He follows it really closely. He obviously collects a lot of stuff. He's got a whole channel about it. He's really passionate about it. So those type of people are probably still going to submit directly to PSA. But what he touches on, that it's like a lot of people looking to get into it and newer to the game, such as myself. Like I'm the perfect example. I started buying cards from GameStop, right? And I had this Aaron Judge card from a long time ago. Each time what I do, if you guys want to do it, to keep track of what I paid, although I guess you could check your GameStop history, but I got this Aaron Judge card back in 2020 for $36. So back in 2019, 2020, when cards were kind of trending again, I was buying and reselling them because I've just tried a lot of things in the past, right? Which at one point I was reselling, like growing up, I remember selling, I would go to garage sales, not growing up, but like in high school, before I had an actual job, I would go to garage sales, Goodwill, try and buy stuff and resell it online. So I'd try and buy and resell trading cards, just do a lot of different things, right? So that was my initial getting to the game of cards. And I remember at that time looking into grading, and I was like, I don't know how this works. And then seeing GameStop get into it made me kind of like, all right, I'm interested again. I start buying some cards. And then I remembered, I'm like, hey, I bought this Jesper Bratt card, right? I got this one. And then where's the other one? Where is it over here? This one. And stick with me, guys. I'm getting to a point here. I'm making a mess on my desk. But where is it? Where is it? Ah, okay. So I got all these cards, right? For $10. For $10. Because I thought Jesper Bratt was going to be a great player. I'm a Devils fan, full disclosure. Tough times right now. Right? So I got all three of these cards. Obviously, this one wasn't graded. I sent it in to be graded. I'm debating sending this one in because, see, it is numbered. We got 18 of 99. So I bought these, right? And I just figured I'll just hang on to them. But then GameStop starts doing the grading, and I'm like, okay, like, I'm kind of curious. Like, this one is a signature. I really like this player. I wouldn't ever go send it in to PSA, right? Like, it just seems too much of a process as a newbie. So I was like, you know what? I'll do it through GameStop. And then I had a couple old Pokemon cards, right? Like I was showing before. And I sent those in through GameStop. And as a newbie collector, it really has kind of introduced me to the game. And I was like, oh, that wasn't too hard, right? So it's really about like getting people involved with it. And then also, if you think of the example, like if a kid wants to do it and they're asking their parents, like, oh, come on. And then it's like, they just look it up. Oh, I could just bring them to GameStop and then they can, run around and look at the cards. And then I could talk to the person and understand how it works rather than trying to figure out, how's a busy parent going to figure out how to send things in to PSA. Right, so just little stuff like that, and I'm not saying like every kid is trying to grade cards, but if one kid does it, tells his friends, or his or her friends, right, and then all of a sudden like, hey, we want to do it too. Come on, mom. Come on, dad. Like, take me there. So little stuff like that, right? Just kind of like introducing people into the game. But I'm hoping we get an extra thing that says PSA grading, or maybe not PSA like grading alone, but maybe just card sales, right? Something like that, just to get an idea. I think it'd be nice to see the grading specifically, but I'm thinking that they might just add it all to collectibles, right? But it would be nice to see its own thing. And then obviously we talked about how Nat Turner's added. And then this is where I was kind of talking about before. I already kind of touched on this, so I won't really go through it again. About how they could buy collectors, but it would be tough, right? Because it's $4.3 billion valuation as of March 30th, 2022. And also, I'm not, just to clarify, guys, I'm not sponsored by this app, Obsidian. I just truly love it. And it's just like an open source thing. There's like ways you can add plugins too. I haven't even really done that yet. Or you can make it even easier. You could set tasks for yourself and all. See, like, you're supposed to be able to color text, but it's just not working. That's what this. Well, you guys can't see it because it's on the bottom right. But point being, it's really helped me organize my ideas. And when I was writing that thread, I was going back to like old information I had here and I was referencing. So really, in terms of doing research with stocks or anything else, really try and organize yourself, because trying to go backwards just it's just much, much harder. So in doing that, it made it like much easier for me to go out and write this. But Tetron, Sharon, hope you're doing well. Thanks for popping in. Is your GME loop ring wallet still active? I'll send you a frog NFT. Because I can, yes. I have to go back and find it, but yes, it should still be active. I like frogs. Hey, Leap Froggles, that's right. That's your name, yeah. I wish I could show you guys, but my webcam doesn't reach yet. I'm not even going to try and do it because it's going to have a hard time putting it back. Because the fish tank is literally right there, but it just doesn't quite like make its way there, like the way my computer's set up over here, but RC took a pic with Icon and nothing came of that. Coffee Donuts and Homer, thanks for being here. I hope you're doing well. Exactly. No, very fair point. Any thoughts why RC moved his shares of his private account? Too bad he didn't buy Baba with the GME cash instead of his own billion. Yeah, I mean, Baba's done well, right? But why did he move the shares out of his private account? That's a good thing. I did forget about that. He moved the shares out of the name of RC Ventures into his name personally. I'm not too sure. I think it's kind of just a personal choice, but at the same time, like, why bother? Maybe to directly register them, right? People were kind of saying that in the past, but honestly, I'm not really sure. So I guess I would say I don't really have any thoughts on it, just because I'm not sure. And if I'm not sure, I don't want to give you like a inauthentic reason, right? So, but thank you for bringing it up. That's another small thing that's happened like over the past quarter or so, I believe, but. We'll see, guys. We will see, because again, it's all just talk until they actually do something. And again, I like what they're doing with PSA. They're going to sell off the sale. They're going to sell off French and Canadian operations. And by the way, they should get a one-time profit from that, right? Maybe not anything too significant. And the French operations is Micromania. So we'll see. Maybe they announce that they sold it off. I don't think so, though, because February 18th, that's already almost the end of. Oh, no, I'm sorry. February is Q1. Yeah, because Q4 is November, December, January. So Q2, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Reset. Q4 is November, December, January. So if they announce this in February, which is technically Q1 at that point, I don't think we're going to get news tomorrow that, hey, they already sold off the sale of French and Canadian operations, right? So with that being the case, so this is probably something that's going to happen at some point in 2025, but just something to kind of keep in mind. And then with PSA, I'm really interested to see how it continues to grow and if anything more comes of it. But then also, the investment policy, it's like, Are they going to use this? Are they going to act upon this? And that's really, I think, one of the major things I'm looking for tomorrow, and I'm sure other people are as well, is that, okay, if they did enact on the investment policy in the quarter, what did they buy? What route are they going to buy? Are they going? Are they doing Bitcoin? Are they doing individual stocks? Are they doing a combination of the two? Or is it strictly right now they're just going to stick with the such investments with original maturity in excess of 90 days and less than 1 year are classified as marketable securities? So are they just going to stick with the marketable securities and bonds, right? But I don't think, again, they can't do that forever, right? And like I have up here, GameStop can be patient, but can't wait for a market crash forever. They have to do something at some point with the cash. And this is just a random thought I have here. But I believe they will, but I understand long-term shareholders are getting impatient, right? Seeing some of them out there. But at the same time, it's like you don't want to overpay, right? Price is what you pay, value is what you get. So you don't want to overpay for something and get minimal value. So I understand they're taking their time, but also, at some point, it's like we got to see like that big move of some form that really, I think, like has to stabilize revenue, because we see, revenue has been decreasing and SG&A has been decreasing, which is great, lowering just overhead costs. And I think it'll continue to decrease. I was thinking maybe it would kind of level off after 2024, but given they're selling off the French and Canadian operations, they're very likely going to continue to sell lower SG&A into 2025, right? And there's been, kind of the signs of them becoming the like holding company. So if that's the case, I'm not as concerned with revenue going up, right? I'm okay with revenue going down a little bit more and net income continuing to rise. If they're going the route of holding things as a holding company. But if they're not, and they're going to make a full acquisition, right, 100% integrate it into their business, that's what I think would really stabilize revenue and then kind of integrate into what they're doing, boost revenue and boost profitability, right? So it's really kind of like they're at a crossroads right now, right? Or it's like that meme where it's kind of like the path goes two ways. One is dark, one is light. Not saying one way or the other is good, one way is bad, but it's kind of like they have to pick a path. I guess they don't really, right? They could do a combination of both, but it kind of seems like we're going to find out whether it's tomorrow or later this year. I'm not sure, but I think sooner than later, right? We're going to find out, like, are they going the route of making acquisitions in terms of like stocks and cryptocurrency to add to the balance sheet? Or are they going the route of acquiring something to integrate within their business? And I kind of go back and forth in terms of what I prefer, right? But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what I personally prefer. It's ultimately a decision of management, and when you're investing in a company, you have to believe in the management team, and then beyond that, you have to, well, yeah, you have to believe in the management team, but you have to believe in them to do the right things, right? And if you don't trust the management team, then you probably don't want to invest in it. But where I was going with that is that I think in the case of GameStop, given the situation and that they've made it clear we're going to hold our cards close to our chest, not telegraph any plans, it really has to be the case where you really have to believe in Ryan Cohen and the board. And I understand that some people got impatient, like, oh, I can't do this anymore, right? And it's like, that's fine. At the end of the day, everyone's got to make their own individual decisions. Truly remember that. Know your own goals. And, if there's a certain price point you want to take profits, like, so be it. But if you're investing for the long term, then you might as well just hang on, right? It all depends in what your goal is, right? There's trading and there's investing, and those are really like two different things. Trading to me is meeting certain price targets, setting stop losses, whereas investing is a long-term plan, and you want to continue to acquire the stock. But when something fundamentally changes, then you consider selling. Or if nothing fundamentally changes and you like where the company's going and the way they're operating, then you just continue to hang on to it, right? Because then why, even if it's going up, why would you want to sell and take capital gains? It's really just about building your wealth, right? And then obviously you can get into IRAs and some tax beneficial strategies, right? Things of that nature, especially if you're like a Roth, right? So like what I did, and again, no financial advice, not the business I'm in, but what I was doing is I was buying shares in my traditional IRA. Let me see. I'll pull up a chart. I forgot exactly what. I'm gonna guesstimate here. I don't remember exactly, but I was buying shares in this range. I think it was 2022. I did it. Whoa, that's S&P. Isn't it funny too? I'm like, oh my gosh, the market's crashing, but like you zoom out and you realize like the drop is so small. Not to say it couldn't fall further, right? Just to clarify. But it's just funny how everyone starts panicking when you get a drop like this, and it's like literally just a blip on the radar. Like when you zoom out, right? Like that literally just looks like nothing, especially the farther you zoom out. It's just a blip on the radar, right? And again, not to say the market can't go down further, but we don't have to talk about that today. But right around here, right? So I did a Roth conversion in late 2022, or I forgot exactly, right? No, it was 2023, right? Because I filed up my taxes last year. So basically, I was buying the shares all in here, right, in the $20 range and whatever. And then once it went down to like $13, $12, it was okay. So, for example, if I just use simple numbers, I contributed $1,000 to my traditional IRA. That means I got a $1,000 write-off on my taxes, right? Or I could deduct that $1,000 from my income. So then I bought the shares. They went down to be worth only about 600. Then I turned around and converted them at that point because now I wrote off $1,000 of income, but then I converted them at the point when they were lower. So that's why generally you see people do Roth conversions when stocks have done a dip, because now when you do a Roth conversion, the money that is the value of the conversion is added to your income. So now, I basically wrote off 1,000, but then added 600. So I basically was able to net, so to speak, like 400 on that, right? So when you think of something's going to go up, generally you want to do a Roth conversion, but again, that's general, no financial advice, and I don't even know why I'm really going on this tangent right now. But point being, like I have a lot of shares in my Roth IRA because I saw the price keep going down, and I was like, okay, I just can't see it going that much lower. Although, when I did it at $13, $14, and then I saw the stock go to 10, I was like, I could have waited, right, and converted at an even better price point. But point being, overall, you got to know your own approach and how you want to go about things. Like if you want to take profits at a certain point, like, or are you just, I'm purely invested and I'll stop being invested once I no longer believe in the company, right? That's really, I think, the approach to take, generally speaking. But again, you got to know your own goals, your own perspective, whether you're thinking about retirement, buying a house, right? And for me, to be completely transparent with you guys, like I really haven't bought shares of GameStop in quite a while because I'm pretty content with my position. And also, I'm honestly preparing for some expensive life events in the future, in the next year or two, right? And I don't ever want to be in a situation with any of my investments, right? Whether it's Bitcoin, GameStop, or another stock I've actually been buying right now is AMD, Advanced Micro Devices, because I think they have a lot of upside. But I'm not, ever going too heavy in anything. I don't ever want to be in a spot where I would have to sell one day because I'm like about to buy a house and I need money for the down payment, right? Like I'm always trying to build my emergency fund. And right now, I'm stacking cash, which might be kind of sounding contrary to what I was saying before. How like, oh, you don't want to sit on cash forever because it's a asset that's losing purchasing power because of just continuous inflation. No matter who the president, whoever's in Congress or whatever, right? The U.S. dollar supply always goes up. Inflation's always here to stay, one way or another, right? It's funny too when they say, "Oh, inflation went from 3% down to 1%." Well, guess what? It's still up 3% and then 1% on top of that, right? So it's still like went up over time. But point being, right now, I've determined I personally want to be cash heavy because I just want to earn as much interest as I can, and I want to be able to use that cash for buying a house in a couple of years time frame. So I don't ever want to be in a situation where I would have to sell shares. But something I've been doing is I've been selling puts on GameStop. Once or twice I've been assigned, and it's been unfortunate, but then I've turned around and sell a call because in doing that, right, and that's the wheel strategy where you sell puts until you get exercise, and then you turn around and sell a call, and you might say, oh my gosh, Tetra, you're selling a call. That's like a bearish position. So how I'm going about it, and again, it's, knowing what's best for yourself. And I've really been doing that in this range here. So I started probably actually right before this happened, right? But I started doing it a lot more from here on out because at this point too, volatility like IV on GameStop is generally higher, so you can collect a pretty good amount of premium, and I try and always go below where the price is. So if it falls, there's a little bit of a cushion where I wouldn't necessarily, or hopefully don't get exercise. Oh my gosh, my cord from my headset was just rubbing against my leg, and I thought there was a spider on me. I hate spiders, so I was like, what the hell? But we're chilling. So what I'm trying to say though, in terms of selling options, is when I'm selling options, this is a completely separate thing from my long-term investments. I will never ever personally choose to sell calls against my shares because I wouldn't want to get exercised and then be out of my shares, right? Or called, my shares be called upon, right? So in selling puts and then turning around and selling calls when necessary, that's something I'm doing entirely separate from my long-term positions that include GameStop. So I'm never ever going to sell a call against my long-term shares. And the only calls I'm selling are when my puts get exercised. And then when my calls get called upon or my shares get called upon for a call that goes in the money, fine. I turn around and I sell a put again. And I keep rinsing and repeating that process. And that's the strategy of the wheel. It's something I've really been implementing. Really feel like in this range here, right? Like over the past year or so, probably since like around the start of last summer. Yeah. So I would say right around here, like in June, right? Because it's around the time of my birthday is when I really started doing it more consistently. And I'm generally selling them about a month out, right? Now I'm kind of dabbling with going a little bit shorter term, but it's like you can't collect, you can collect more premium if you keep selling them like every week, but it's more stressful because the price keeps moving around. It's more, you have to be more active with it, right? So please don't blindly follow what I'm saying right now in terms of selling options, but I think it's something worth looking into. And to me, I said in the past a lot, I was like, oh, I don't really trade, but now I've kind of pivoted and I'm like, okay, this is how I want to trade. I don't want to go buying calls or buying puts and potentially go to zero. And the reason I thought, hey, I'm going to sell options is because generally speaking, more options than not expire worthless. Of course, that's a very general statement, but really when you're buying a call or buying a put, you're fighting against time. Like you're fighting against time decay. Whereas when you're selling the option, time is on your side. So if the stock's moving sideways, time, like the option is losing value, therefore your position is becoming more and more green. So that's really why I like selling options personally. But yeah, again, it's not for everyone. And I would for me, like if I'm gonna in choosing to do some type of trading, I'm not interested in doing calls or puts because I've done like a lot of things, guys. I think I've talked about this a little bit. I'm by no means the most experienced in the market, or to tell you like, oh, I've been in the market all these years, right? Like that's not what I'm trying to say here. But I've been messing with stocks and different things since 2017. Full disclosure, I'm 24, about to turn 25 this summer. But the reason I say that is I'm very, very fortunate to be on the journey that I'm on because in the beginning, I started with all the crazy things. I was trying to day trade. I was going for meme coins back in 2018, 2019. I remember being in class, literally senior in high school, and like looking with some kid. We're like, what is this crypto stuff? Let's try and buy it and find the next big one and make a bunch of money. And I would try and buy calls and puts. And during the early days of the pandemic, I was sitting at home. I'm an options trader. I'm a day trader. I know what I'm doing, right? And I tried all the different things, Forex, um, you name it. The get rich quick things. I've tried it, right? But what I'm very, very thankful for is that I was doing all of that when I was a broke high school kid and broke early college kid. So by the time I started to gain the knowledge of like, okay, like you can't rush, you can't go for the get rich quick thing or you're gonna lose out. By the time I learned that, I was already like I'd already gained some experience, and at that point, then I actually started to have some money because was working my way up. At the time, I was working at Marshalls, like part of like TJX, like TJ Maxx, those kind of things. So I became like a assistant manager, and then I started getting like some good money. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm not going to go for these get rich quick things anymore. I'm going to start, doing stocks, adding to the S&P 500, right? Doing things like that. So I'm very, very fortunate that I made my silly mistakes prior to having money. And not to say like, oh yeah, I have money now, you know what I mean? But at that time, I didn't have like thousands of dollars to just throw around, you know what I mean? So I was very fortunate to learn from making silly mistakes at a young age so that now I am where I'm at and I feel very confident in managing risk, understanding how I want to balance cash versus assets, how much am I putting in my 401k, all these different things, right? I feel very comfortable in balancing it. And then I got to the point, right? Like in summer of last year, I was like, okay, I've paid off all of my student debt except one loan. That is a very small loan. It's about like $4,000 or $5,000 left on it, something like that. And the only reason I haven't paid it off is because the interest rate is like 2.5%. And I could pay it off tomorrow because I have, that much, more than that, but I had that much in one particular account as an emergency fund. But theoretically, I could pay off that 5,000, let's just say to use a simple number, tomorrow. But I choose not to because I'm like, okay, it's earning the rate of interest is 2.5%. And in the high yield savings account, I'm earning about 4%. So I'm actually netting a difference of 1.5. And then also the interest income, or sorry, the interest expense is a small tax write-off. So it's at a very small scale, right? But that to me is like good debt. And that's me just being able to manage things. So when I got to here where I paid off my private loans with like non-favorable interest rates, then I was like, okay, I'm going to start adding money into an account to try this selling options thing. So I've been consistently adding to this account and I've been building it in selling options. And that's kind of my journey. And actually, ironically enough, the thing, I don't want to bore you guys with all the storytelling because I probably wind up telling the story tomorrow. I feel like I say it every quarter, but in here, I got so lucky with a call option. I literally got to pay off a student loan because I was trading Palantir options at that time. That was when I was trading all kinds of options, pandemic or whatever. And I was very fortunate to make enough money. My friend's like, do GameStop. Okay, buy it. The option's going up and up. It's the farthest side of the money. Just a weekly was going up and up and up and up. I'm like, all right, I'm going to sell it. I'm out of day trade, so I was forced to hold it overnight, and that was the night Elon Musk tweeted GameStop, and that next day literally changed my life. It was crazy. And then from here, I was trading options all in here, all the way through here, and then it got to about the summer of 2021, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to start accumulating shares of GameStop. So really, right in here is when I started accumulating shares, like my very first shares, and then all throughout here, right, all throughout this steady decline down that we've seen. I've just accumulated. And I'm honestly not sure exactly what my cost basis is. If I had to guess, it's around where we're at right now, to be honest with you, around $25. So that's kind of my journey, but yeah, apologies. I feel like I'm ranting away here. Let's see. My prediction is 130 million of net income. Sommer, thank you for being here. Yeah, I don't think that's impossible at all. It seems crazy compared to the analyst estimates, but when you look at what the interest income is going to be and what the operating income has been the Q4 for the past 2 years, I don't think that's far-fetched at all. I hope GME's crazy IV comes back. Too many shares after the dilution, so it dropped. Yeah, I think so, Coffee, and I think it's also just kind of, in this period here, like this was the excuse me, the first time in a while we had a steady climb up without any kind of like dramatic moves. So maybe that also was a factor in it. And also the same here, kind of slowly declining, nothing crazy. Cash purposes for short-term needs, large purchases, and lower volume in portfolio. Nothing wrong with cash. Yeah, Joe. You're absolutely right. I agree, Joe. Jimmy can sit on the cash forever. No rush. When's your birthday? June 27th. June 27th. So we're about 3 months and 3 days away. It's crazy. But that comment was directed to touch on it a little bit. Hey, I don't know anyone who has been successful being impatient. Very good point. Stacking cash is what Warren's doing with Berkshire. Hey, that's a very good point, Coffee. That's a very, very great point. He's the greatest investor in the world, and it's like everyone's like, oh, old man just sitting on his cash, but it's like he's seen a thing or two. You know what I mean? The cash protects GME from closing up shop due to their shorts. Even if RC kept $1 billion in the bank, it's prudent. 2 more weeks, and I can get my covered call shares back and do it again. Nice. Give it to me, baby. Morrow. Thank you for being here. Hey. See what tomorrow brings, right? Let's see what tomorrow brings. But yeah, I think that's just about all I had for today. So overall, I'm looking for strong net income. I really want to see my estimate, right? Is this 104 million number, 24 cents of EPS? But even if we get like 85 million, which would probably be about 20 cents of EPS, I would be satisfied. And then I am very curious what revenue is going to be. I'm not too concerned about it, though. I'm really concerned about the bottom line. But it would be encouraging, I will say, to see revenue kind of hold up, because then to me that would be partial evidence that the PSA card sales and grading process is really helping them improve. And then, again, it's just the little things like the cards being in their inventory, holding their value much better than like NHL 25 or Madden 25, right? Things of that nature, or the new Call of Duty game, and then a newer game comes out and there's a price cut on it, and GameStop's now selling that for a loss, right? Just little things like that. So thanks, Tetron. Looking forward to more videos from you. Yes, Scott, stay tuned. I'm definitely going to do an earnings recap. Probably have it come out like Wednesday, or if I have the energy tomorrow night after the streaming. But yeah, you guys, follow me on X if you haven't already, because I've been a lot more active on here just because it's easier. Like I'm on the go a lot and just been doing a lot of different stuff, and also like just trying to live, a lot of different experiences in life. That kind of sounds corny and whatnot, but trying to do it right now. So that's why I've just been on Twitter a lot because it's easy. I just go on my phone, do things quick, right? Little things like that. But then, then again, I would come back to this and like I'm having a great time tonight streaming and doing videos and like I'm like, why do I stop this? Why do I take breaks? Right? What's the point? Just keep going, right? And I've been posting, videos here and there, but I could do more. I know I could do more. I know I could do better. But yeah, I would, suggest to everyone, have your plan in place tomorrow, right? If you're a trader, have your plan in place, and whatever that may be, that's up to you. But if you're an investor, just try and analyze the numbers and digest it and then not overreact, because I feel like, especially with GameStop, it's always like, oh my gosh, this happened, or oh, good, oh, bad. And then you kind of sit on it a little bit, you digest it, everything kind of comes down, you're kind of see it from a different perspective, right? So sometimes you just got to kind of be patient with things. But, I think in general, being a long term investor is all about patience, right? Like, look at Palantir, for example. That's a stock I do own as well. And I'm very fortunate to have a very good cost base on it. Shout out to Joe in the chat. He's given me quite a bit of information on that. So he was buying it as well during this period. And a bunch of my friends, right? Other people I know were buying it all in this range. But basically, went up here, and this is the place when I was buying calls before I bought my GameStop call a while back. But that was, again, my philosophy has changed very much so since this period. But point being, like, I was buying shares this whole way down, and then right in here, right, I was buying a little shares, and then I was kind of like, yeah, all right, I'm gonna see it ride. It starts going up, and then I was like, all right, let me keep letting it ride. I will be honest, I regret not consistently buying shares, even as it started going up more. But it's a learning experience, right? But at the same time, at that time, I was like content with my position. So be it, right? So sometimes you have to go back and reflect upon how you want about things, but at the same time, consider, why you were doing those things at that time. And for me, at that time, I was content with my position. I'm like, all right, I'm going to let it ride. And then it started going up and up and up. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't really want to buy shares anymore because now it's gone up a lot, right? And now I'll be honest, I think Palantir is overvalued at this time, right? I think this is the type of stock that could easily drop to like $60, $50, right? In a scenario where the market starts going down again. But at the same time, like I love what they're doing in terms of their partnerships and where they're going. So I'm not too worried about it. And again, it's easy to say that because I have an excellent cost base on it. But point being, I have a long-term mindset with that. So, those of you that don't know, if you're curious, like 3 stocks I hold and really like. But again, please don't just follow what I say blindly. Do your research if you're interested in any of these stocks. Always make your own individual decisions. But I just touched on 2 of them. Palantir and AMD, that's one I've been buying. I just feel like it's been sold off for so long. And the other one's Fortinet. I followed this one for a very long time. It's a cybersecurity based company, and I just feel like they're very, very well run. And one thing that I do like, make sure I got to everything today. Yep. About Fortinet a lot is it was founded by 2 brothers, and they still hold a very large majority of the shares. So I'll pull it up for you real quick. And in learning about GameStop having strong insider ownership and, the insiders having skin in the game, I saw a nice correlation with that in Fortinet. And, the 17.49%, and I can tell you a large majority of that is the founder and CEO. Of course, his name is slipping my mind right now, but we could go find it right here. So he has a very significant amount of interest, vested interest, I should say. And so do the other insiders, but nowhere near as much, right, as the 2 brothers who have started it, right? Michael G and Kenneth G. So, see, they both have pretty significant amount of shares, right? And they founded the company and they run it to this day, right? So that's just an example of like insiders having skin in the game and being easy to believe in the long term because they're driving the companies forwards. And it's the same thing with GameStop, right? Ryan Cohen has significant skin in the game. So I do believe in him to drive the company forwards. And I know not everyone believes that, but we'll just have to stick around and find out, right? Or you don't have to stick around. You could watch from the sidelines. That's all right too, right? Because at the end of the day, it's up to everyone what they want to do. And it's all about making your own individual decisions, right? And there's always going to be people that disagree, guys. There's always going to be people that disagree. And that's okay. Like, I really try and welcome it. When people come in, oh, GameStop's bad. I'm like, okay, why? They're like, they're closing stores. I'm like, okay, so you're just taking it at face value, though. That's all right, but it's much deeper than that, right? And that's just how I see it. So, We don't care. Thanks for being here. My friends claim GME is basically as good as investing in meme coins. Any chance I could pick your brain on that thought? Oh yeah, I got you real quick. We don't care. Don't worry. Hold on. Let me read the rest of them. Thanks, Tetron. I was looking forward to more videos. Remember, meme coins have no cash flow. GME's full income from with billions in assets and cash in the bank. Your friends are dum dums. That's what I was saying. LOL. Yeah, we don't care. I get that too, and like, it's like I'm not gonna argue with them. My one friend always. I think at this point though, he's just. I know at this point he's just messing with me. But he's like, "Oh, GameStop's going bankrupt. Every time I go there, the store is busy." This is the same guy who's buying a stock because he's like, every time I go there, its store's busy. But I'm like, you're not even gonna read like the numbers and stuff like that. So I would say, like, in life in general, good advice I got one time is like, be careful who you get it. Be careful who you take advice from. Right? You don't want to take advice from someone who's not building wealth. Right? So if they're just saying that with no substance, then so be it. I've had debates with friends where they're like, well, they're not really doing anything. I'm like, yes, but like the potential is there, and I really think they're taking their time, which might not be the most popular opinion, but to me, it's just like simply that's what they're doing. It's a matter of like, do you agree with it or not? And for me, I'm okay with it. I've been on this ride for a while, and to me, I see them doing the little things right, and I feel like that big thing is coming, whether it's acquiring Bitcoin and or other stocks and going the acquisition route, really enacting on the investment policy, or making an acquisition and just integrating into their business, or maybe a combination of those things, right? But I think just because it's well run and because of their patience, there's so much potential, right? And then also, I think the underlying short interest situation, like you'll notice, I don't really talk about that too much because it's so hard to pinpoint it, right? And I feel like no matter what, people are like, oh, this is the smoking gun, right? We found it. But to me, it's like, it's so hard to truly know, right? But in my opinion, this is strictly my opinion, take it with a grain of salt, is that there is underlying short interest that's suppressed. How exactly? I'm not sure. But I look at it as if the company succeeds and drives forwards and is successful, whatever's underlying will bubble to the top at some point or another. And then regardless, even if that is somehow not the case, right? Somehow all the shorts covered, even though it was short over more than 100% in 2020 and prior to that, right? Significant shorting leading up to that. Even if that wasn't the case, right? If the company's succeeding and driving forwards, then I'm still okay, right? It's still a good investment. That's how I think of it. So I really try not to even focus on the short squeeze aspect of it. I'm not going to say like, or not even short squeeze, just the underlying short interest. I'm not going to say like, oh yeah, like that has nothing to do with anything, because I do think there are still people betting against the company to this day. And like the example I always go back to is Archegos. When they blew up, it was like they had all these positions, like these massive like long positions that weren't even visible, and a couple short positions where it's like they weren't even visible because they were like a private family office. And then also we know, and how they were doing it was literally like custom basket swaps with counterparties that were like very, very large banks. And the only reason they got caught is basically because they accidentally like, there's a misclick. They accidentally like sent money to one bank and they're like, hey, what, how'd you get that, or something like that. And then they all kind of started realizing, all the counterparties, all the banks, like, hey, wait, they're telling us they have these assets, and they're telling you and you that you also have these, you're using the same assets as collateral to borrow against with all of us. And then they all start to say, hey, we need cash, we need more cash collateral, and then they couldn't put it up, right? And then that's when everything went phew. So just the fact stuff like that can happen makes it evident to me that it's not like, it seems crazy on a surface level to anyone who's not followed in depthly the GameStop story from the beginning. Oh yeah, hiding short interest, oh, it's so crazy, right? I really don't think it is, right? I really don't think it is. But again, I try not to focus on it too much, because to me, so long as the company's succeeding, in my opinion, whatever's underlying will bubble up to the surface at some point. Whether it's this year, next year, the following year, I have no idea. But if the company's driving forward and succeeding, that alone will raise the share price. But then I think, whatever's underneath will bubble to the surface at some point or another. And that's kind of my take on it. So I just focus on the fundamentals of the company and what they're doing. I keep that in the back of my mind. But I'll read stuff here and there. But to me, I just mostly want to focus on how the company's going about things. And you'll notice, like, of this whole giant sheet I have here, right, of all this information of notes and lines and like it's all what GameStop's doing and like action they've taken. The little things like the Raptor 8 mobile controller, Mod Retro, CandyCon, right? I think they've added some. I know if they've added some more like CandyCon attachments here, and I love my CandyCon controller. Actually, I don't know where is it here. Yeah, I love it, honestly. It's great when I'm just like playing a casual game like on my PC, right? Like nothing crazy and people say, "Oh, yeah, like that's not going to move the needle," but it's just about the small things, right, that they're doing. And I'm waiting for that big thing. And to me that big thing is either acquiring assets on the balance sheet, right? Going with a Berkshire Hathaway type of approach, or acquiring something significant to integrate into their business and further develop them. And I was thinking originally the gaming industry, but now I think a lot more so in the collectibles industry because it's evident, they've been selling a lot more cards. Every time I go in there, I feel like I see more card packs for sale to be open. They're doing the events like the tear and grade or what's I don't know remember the name, but it's basically where you open the packs and you could send them in on the spot to go get graded, right? So you ideally get a PSA 10 because you're taking them out of the box purely. And I found myself recently too. Like I think I kept I don't know where they are. Oh yeah, I literally look. I still have them. I have these like I wear gloves when I open the packs now because I'm like in case I pull something crazy, I want the card to stay in pristine condition. And I immediately put it into like one of these things, right? What's it called? Top loaders or I don't know where they are right now, but yeah, that's kind of where my head's on that. But hope that helps. We don't care. I apologize. I hope you're still here. I know I said I was gonna. I always do this, guys. Those of you who know me know I'm always like, oh, we're gonna wrap it up. And I always rip it for like 10 or 15 more minutes, just yapping away. Scott, do an interview with Tetron about GME. Might have to do that at some point. FTNT looks solid at a glance. 4 billion in cash, 1 billion in debt, 17% insider ownership. Yeah, coffee, exactly. And one thing I can tell you about their debt as well is if you look back, they actually never had debt prior to. So when they took that 1 billion on back in like 2021, I was like, what the heck is this? They took it on at a 1% rate and they took on that debt and it's a balloon payment, meaning they pay it. They're not even paying it right now. They're paying it upon its expiry, which I think if I remember correctly is like 2027 or something like that. So that 1% compounds, right, over these several years, but again, it's just 1%. And then they pay it all off at one point. So, with that being the case, they don't even have to worry about the payment till a later date. And on top of it, I was like, why would they take debt? And then I realized in hindsight, I'm like, oh, they decided let's take on debt before interest rates go up. And do you see a world where interest rates are 1% anytime remotely in the future? I don't, even if the Fed cuts rates a bunch, throughout this year and even a little bit next year. I don't think we're ever going back to 0 to 1% rates, right? I mean, maybe never say never, right? But my point being, like, that's another situation where I was like, okay, that was a good decision by management because they decided to take on debt to grow their business, and strengthen their balance sheet in terms of talking about Fortinet. That is, they're like, okay, we can take it on at a 1% rate. This is not something we're going to be able to do for many, many years ahead, and we want to focus on driving our business forwards, and they're able to do that. Yeah, so. But yeah, guys, stay tuned around 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. One hour before GameStop reports earnings, I will be going live. We're going to talk about some things going in, some of the same stuff from today, and I'll try and build upon it as well. But then, yeah, we're going to cover earnings live as they come out. Should be a lot of fun. Always get a lot of people in there for those. Get the GME Bears too, so we'll be trolling them a little bit. That should be fun. But yeah, I appreciate you guys being here. If you could just feel like subscribing, that's awesome. You want to follow on X at Tetron Invest. I usually post when I'm going to stream, post when I'm writing more, right? I'm trying to write more and more, so you can follow me on there. And yeah, of course, you got to don't forget tomorrow too. Dunk your face in ice water, rub that banana peel on your face, and drink a lot of Saratoga water. Maybe I'll even get wild enough and bring some Saratoga water to the stream tomorrow for good luck. But we'll see. And thank you guys so much for the love you showed, those who engaged with my posts here, as well as this one. These each took a little bit over an hour each because I really try and put my time into them and make sure they're quality work. But yeah, I appreciate you guys so much. So no more stupid French load. Yeah, Dinero, thanks for being here. Yeah, at this point, it's such a small amount. I think it's about to be paid off. I think you're right. Is it about at the point where it's going to be? I'll make that the last thing. Look at last results. Long-term debt. Look at the balance sheet. Yeah, they're getting real close to paying it off. Yeah, but I know what you mean. It's like when it's such a minuscule amount, I guess they might as well pay it off. But same thing with that. That's like a 1% rate loan. So I understand why I did it at the time. But all right, guys, I'm done yapping for today. Again, I appreciate you so much. I'll be live tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern, 1 hour before earnings drop. I got a good feeling, but at the same time, that means literally nothing, right? That means absolutely nothing. And we'll just let the numbers do the talking. If there's any news, we'll absolutely talk about it. And yeah, it's a big one because it's a 10K filing, which means it's for the full year. It's a full year earnings report. It's not just a quarter. So we'll see what happens, right? We will see what happens. I don't know. I don't think anybody truly knows. It's fun to speculate. That's fine. But don't ever, YOLO into options because of some speculation or some post you saw, right? Or this, like, oh, well, they have a mergers acquisitions page on the backlinks of their website, right? You can't just go based upon that, right? If you really want to, fine. I can't stop you, right? I'm not here to stop you. But my point being, I think, you always got to take these things with a grain of salt. And so many hype dates have come and gone. So just do what's best for you. If you can tolerate the risk of options and you want to do that, fine, go ahead. It's up to you, right? It's totally up to you. But if not, I think just ride the journey, right? Ride the journey. And I wonder if that guy, I think he usually comes to the quarterly streams. He comes into this quarterly streams, he's like, I'm streaming you at work. Everyone's watching. GME, you're such a GME clown, or something like that. But I'm like, thanks for showing me to everyone. But get ready tomorrow, guys. We're going to have the Bulls, the Bears, the Kangaroos, right? This kangaroo market up and down. We're going to have them all in here. So it should be interesting. But legacy short interest is hidden in bullet swaps. You don't know that? The Archego story? Yes, sir. Coffee. Yes, sir. But like I said, I just focus on the fundamentals and whatever's underlying bubbles to the surface over time. But I'll continue to be here and document my journey. And yeah, again, appreciate you guys so much. Follow me on X live tomorrow. Wrapping it up here. Have a good night.